People in Wyoming like to say winter here can take anything from you. Cattle, memories, even the promises no one ever dared to speak aloud. But sometimes, that same cold brings things no one expects. Like the night Samuel Briggs found a young widow asleep beside his horse and heard her whisper a name he never thought he would hear again. His wife's name. Eliza. It was the winter of 1900, the kind of cold that made the wind bite like a blade. Sam, a man in his early 50s with broad shoulders and tired eyes, was leading his horse home after a delivery in the nearby town. He was used to the cold, used to the silence, and used to the fact that no one waited for him in the little cabin anymore. Not since Eliza, his wife, had died in a snowstorm 5 years earlier. When a man loses a gentle kind of love, he slows down, talks less, and hides himself in simple chores like mending fences, tending horses, or carving wood scraps just to keep his hands from shaking. That night, the snow was so thick he had to set up a temporary shelter. Cooper, his old loyal horse, suddenly grew restless, stomping and shifting backward. Sam reached for its mane to calm it, and that was when he saw a small figure curled up against the horse's flank. A young woman, nearly unconscious, her hair crusted with frost, her face raw from the cold. She rested her head against Cooper, as if clinging to the last bit of warmth she could find. Sam knelt beside her and checked her breath, faint, but still there. He carried her into the tent, laid her near the fire, wrapped her in blankets, and dripped a little warm water onto her lips. When he started to stand, her hand caught his shirt, barely gripping but desperate. And then she whispered a single word, so soft that without the perfect silence he would have missed it. Eliza. Sam's heart clenched. He had not heard anyone speak that name in years, a name he kept tucked away for the quietest nights. But this woman was a stranger, 20 years younger than him. Why would she say his wife's name? He studied her pale, exhausted face. She couldn't possibly have anything to do with Eliza. But outside, the wind howled as if it wanted to drag every question into the dark. Right now, the only thing that mattered was keeping her alive. The rest could wait until morning. Sam stayed awake all night by the fire, holding her frozen hand from time to time so the warmth wouldn't slip away. By dawn, her breathing had steadied. When the first light slid into the tent, the young woman opened her eyes. She looked around, confused, then startled upright with fear and embarrassment. Sam lifted both hands in reassurance. "You got caught in the storm. I pulled you in here to get warm. No one's going to hurt you." She breathed fast, then calmed down. "You saved me?" Sam nodded. "My name is Samuel Briggs." She hesitated before answering. "I'm Claire Dawson." Sam was about to ask more when Claire blinked and whispered, flustered, "Last night, did I say anything?" He paused only a second. "You called out a name." "What name?" "Eliza." Claire's eyes widened. She shook her head. "I don't know anyone by that name." The wind pushed hard against the tent, carrying a long, hollow cry inside, like a reminder that last night had not been a dream. Sam stood, pulling on his coat. "The storm's not done yet. My ranch is a few hours by horse. If you want, you can stay there a few days. Rest up before moving on." Claire clutched the blanket tighter. Her voice was soft, worn, honest. I don't have anywhere else to go." Sam helped her stand, opened the flap, and said quietly, almost to himself, "Then for now, you can come with me." She bowed her head in gratitude. Sam only answered, "I'm doing this because I know what it feels like to lose someone to the cold." She looked as if she wanted to ask more, but the old man simply tightened the reins and led the way in silence. Their shadows stretched long across the snow, and in Sam Briggs's mind, one question echoed again and again. Why did she know Eliza's name? The Wyoming sunrise was never truly warm, but that morning, as Sam and Claire stepped out of the snow tent, the sky had softened. The snow was still deep, and the wind still whispered through the pine trees, like the weary breath of the earth. But at least the storm had passed. Sam strapped the bags onto his horse and watched Claire pulling his heavy coat around her small frame. Standing there in the endless white, she looked like a gust of wind could lift her away. They traveled without speaking much. Sam was the kind of man who let silence do its own work. Claire didn't have the strength for conversation anyway. She clutched the coat and sometimes took a long breath just to remind herself she was still alive. After about an hour, she finally spoke, her voice small but steady. "Mr. Briggs, did I really say the name Eliza last night?" Sam kept his eyes forward. He didn't want to frighten her, but he didn't want to lie either. "Yes, you did." Claire frowned. She searched her memory, but all she found was darkness, ice, and the feeling of slipping under. "I'm sorry if that troubled you." Sam shook his head. "No, it's just been a long time since anyone has said that name." And he fell quiet. Claire glanced at him. He looked like a man who had lived through more than one lifetime's worth of loss. Broad shoulders carried slightly forward, hands worn and rough yet gentle in every motion. A man once hardened like stone, but with something fragile glimmering in his eyes. They traveled farther. The snow thinned, revealing streaks of pale brown earth, and in the distance the first rooftops of the scattered ranch land appeared. Claire asked softly, "You live there alone?" "With an old horse and a few things nobody needs." "What about family?" Sam answered slowly, "I had one. I don't anymore." Claire understood he didn't want to say more, so she didn't press him. They reached his ranch near late afternoon. The house was small but sturdy, with a wide porch overlooking the white field. Sam helped Claire off the horse, opened the door, lit the fire, and handed her a clean blanket. Inside the warm cabin, Claire saw his face clearly for the first time. Deep lines framed his eyes, yet there was a strange softness in him, the kind that comes from losing too much and learning to appreciate every breath that remains. Sam brewed hot tea and placed it in front of her. "Drink, then sleep." Claire wrapped her arms around the mug like she was holding every bit of warmth she had left. She sipped slowly, her eyes relaxing. "You're too kind, Sam. I'm not used to being treated gently." He stared into the flames. "I'm only doing what's right. A snowstorm spares no one." Claire took a quiet breath. "You asked why I said the name Eliza. I truly don't know, but I feel like I've heard it before." Sam lifted his head. "Where?" Claire narrowed her eyes, trying to remember. "I'm not sure. In the fever, it felt like someone else was calling me, and I answered, and somehow that name came out of my mouth." Sam folded his hands. "Do you know anyone named Eliza?" "No, I don't think so, but..." Claire lowered her head. "I still have a few things that belong to my husband. Maybe there's a clue somewhere." Sam froze. "Your husband? How long has he been gone?" 3 months. The wind howled against the window. Sam looked at her, eyes dimmed with sympathy. "I'm sorry for asking." "It's all right. I'm learning how to say it without crying." She tried to smile, but her lips trembled. "His name was Owen Dawson. He was a miner. An accident took everything." Sam said nothing. Claire continued. "Before he died, he gave me a little journal. He told me that if I ever needed a place to start over, I should go north. There was a kind woman who helped him when he was young. He never told me her name." Sam leaned slightly forward. And you think that woman might be... Maybe her name was Eliza. I'm not sure. But something makes me think so. A strange silence settled over the room. Sam stared at the fire, though he wasn't seeing the flames. He saw a woman with soft brown hair and gentle blue eyes. A woman who never turned away a stranger even when Sam feared she was too trusting. Eliza. Claire watched him. If the woman who helped Owen was named Eliza, and if you knew someone by that name, then maybe me saying it last night wasn't just an accident. Sam closed his eyes. Maybe. But inside him, something else stirred. Something that hurt and warmed and frightened him all at once. Claire hesitated. Sam, did you know someone named Eliza? He opened his eyes, a very slow nod. Yes, I did. She waited for more, but Sam only stood, tossed more wood onto the fire, and said in a low voice, as if afraid the wind outside might overhear, "When you're stronger, I'll tell you everything." Night settled, the snow began to fall again, and Claire drifted into sleep in the warm cabin. Sam sat alone at the table, staring out the window. Snowflakes touched the glass and melted slowly, like a question fading in his mind. And for the first time in years, Sam wondered, was someone guiding Claire to him? And was the name she spoke in the dark an accident, or a message from the woman he had loved all his life? The next morning was clearer, though the cold still sank deep into the bones, as if reminding everyone that a Wyoming winter never made excuses. Sam rose early, stirred the fire back to life, warmed a little coffee, then checked on Cooper in the barn. When he came back inside, Claire was sitting in a wooden chair with a blanket around her shoulders. Her hair fell loosely, her face still pale, but there was a bit of life in her eyes. On the table, she had placed an old cloth pouch tied with a leather string. Sam noticed it hadn't been there the day before. Claire spoke softly. "I want you to see this. It's all I have left of my husband." Sam sat down. Claire opened the pouch and pulled out a small notebook with a worn cover and pages yellowed from the dampness of the mines. She flipped through the first few scribbled lines, then handed it to him. "You can read it. I want you to know." Sam hesitated, but her steady nod gave him permission. He opened the notebook, and the first lines made his chest tighten. Owen Dawson, Claire's husband, had written about a woman he called by a name Sam knew better than any other. Eliza. The young man wrote about wandering into a little town near the foothills, cold, hungry, and carrying nothing but empty hands. A woman had pulled him into her kitchen, set a warm bowl of soup in front of him, and smiled in a way that reminded him he was still human. Sam kept reading. Owen wrote, "I don't know why she was so kind. Her husband looked at me like he was afraid I'd take advantage of her, but she helped me anyway. She said the world is already too cold, so any place that can be warm should stay warm." Sam stopped. That was what Eliza used to say. He remembered clearly the afternoon she said it while they handed out free meals to the poor miners. He turned another page. Owen had written, "I never forgot that couple. If someday I meet a good woman who truly loves me, I want to take her somewhere like the place where they lived. People aren't kind because they're rich. They're kind because they've known loss and don't want anyone else to feel it." Sam set the notebook down, his hands trembling just slightly. Claire watched him closely, her eyes asking for answers. "Do you know who that woman was?" Sam swallowed the ache in his throat. "Yes, I do." Claire whispered, "I must have said her name because I heard Owen talk about her. He spoke of Eliza like she was still alive, like she was the reason he believed in kindness. But he never told me who she was or where she lived." Sam sat very still. Then he spoke, his voice no stronger than a breath. Eliza was my wife. Claire's eyes widened, and her breath caught. A long, heavy silence filled the room. She pressed a hand to her chest as if steadying her heart. Your wife? Was the woman my husband owed his life to? Sam nodded, staring at the journal. She helped many people. I never imagined one of them would be your husband. Claire's voice tightened. If not for her, Owen might have died at 17, and I would never have met him. A cold draft slipped in through the window frame, making the fire flicker like it was echoing the whisper of someone long gone. Sam closed his eyes and breathed deeply. Now he understood why Claire had spoken Eliza's name in the storm. When someone dies, their memory sometimes lives on in others. Owen was gone, but his stories of Eliza and Sam must have settled in Claire's mind so deeply that, caught between life and death, she reached for the name of the woman who once saved him. Claire looked at him for a long time, with a strange mixture of sorrow, gratitude, and something unexpectedly close. Sam, are you angry that I said her name? Sam shook his head, his voice dropping. No, I think she wanted you to come here. Claire placed the journal back into the pouch and held it tight like a talisman. Maybe I came because Owen believed this was the safest place, because you're the one person who knows what loss feels like. Sam stared into the fire and whispered, and maybe it's a place where you can start again. They fell silent. Not the uneasy kind, but the kind shared by two people standing on the strange border where the past touches the present. Outside, the snowfall eased and the sky grew brighter. There was something different in the air. Something that felt like Eliza was still somewhere near, watching them with the same gentle smile she always had whenever she saw someone find a place to keep going. And Sam, for the first time in years, felt something he thought he'd never feel again. The warmth of a beginning. That night, after Claire had gone upstairs to rest, Sam sat alone in the kitchen. The small room glowed only with the firelight flickering against the wooden walls, revealing the cracks time had carved, cracks he carried inside himself as well. He opened Owen's journal again. Each line made his heart tighten a little, not from jealousy or sorrow, but because the words felt like Eliza was speaking to him through another man's hand. Sam laid his palm on the page and closed his eyes. It had been years since he heard anyone speak Eliza's name with gratitude instead of pity. He never imagined the young man she once helped would send his wife to Sam's doorstep. He exhaled heavily. Outside, the wind howled through the cracks, but the coldest place that night was inside him. The next morning, Claire came downstairs to find Sam making coffee. He did not look at her as he said, "The weather isn't too harsh today. If you feel strong enough, I want to take you to town." She paused. "Why?" Sam set the cup down. "Someone needs to meet you, and there's a place you should see." She didn't ask further. She had already begun to understand Sam was a man who never wasted words. In town, Sam led her to a small building beside the church. It had once been the temporary soup house Eliza ran every winter for miners. The wooden door was faded, but the old sign still faintly read, "A hot meal for those in need." Claire stood before it, trembling slightly, though the air wasn't terribly cold. "This is where," Sam nodded, "where Eliza met many people, your husband among them." An older woman stepped out, recognized Sam, and smiled warmly. "Sam Briggs. It's been a long time." Then she glanced at Claire. "And this young lady is—" Claire hesitated, so Sam answered, "This is Claire Dawson. Her husband once met Eliza here." The woman's eyes widened and she pressed a hand to her chest, as if hearing a familiar name she never expected to return. Good heavens, I remember Owen. He was so young back then. Thin as a stick. If Eliza hadn't helped him, I doubt he would have made it through that winter. Claire lowered her head. The woman placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Dear, you don't know. Eliza cared for lost souls like they were her own kin. Anyone who walked through that door, she treated as if she'd known them for years. Then she looked at Sam, her voice softening. Eliza always said your heart was big enough to love the whole world. You were just too stubborn to show it. Sam turned away, hiding the storm rising inside him. As they left the churchyard, Claire walked beside him without speaking. Eventually, she said quietly, Sam, are you sure you want me to know all this? I'm afraid it will only make things harder for you. Sam looked down at the snow-dusted road. I've been hurting for a long time, Claire. Having you here, it feels like something in me is finally being stitched back together. When they reached the ranch, the sky had turned gray. Sam opened the door, but stopped abruptly. He was looking at the wooden shelf on the wall, where Eliza's winter shawl was folded. The shawl she had used to save strangers during storms. He took it down and held it in both hands, as if it were sacred. You know, he said, his voice deep and rough, the day Eliza died in the blizzard, I ran into the snow until I couldn't see. I couldn't save her. I've always believed it was my fault. Claire's eyes softened as her heart sank. Sam, he continued, his voice almost a confession. I thought if I had gone to meet her sooner, if I had insisted she stay inside, if I hadn't let her walk out alone. His voice broke. Claire placed a hand on his arm, gently tightening her grip. Sam, no one can fight a blizzard. No one. He shook his head. But I was her husband. I should have been able to protect her. Claire swallowed hard. You know, Owen always said Eliza was the only person who helped him when he had nothing left. If she hadn't fed him, sheltered him, I would never have met the kindest man I ever loved. And you wouldn't have me standing here today. Sam went still. Her words broke something open inside him, not in pain, but in truth. Claire's voice trembled, yet held firm. Sam, the only mistake you've carried is that you never forgave yourself. Eliza forgave you long ago. I can feel that. Sam closed his eyes. A long breath slipped from him, thin and tired, like the last coil of grief finally unwinding. In that moment, he understood what he had never been able to grasp. Losing Eliza wasn't his failure. Sometimes life is cruel in ways no one can stop. But if the kindness she planted had led Claire to him, then maybe Eliza had found one last way to help him rise from the place where he had fallen. They stood together in the wooden cabin, neither speaking. But the silence no longer felt cold. It felt like the moment snow begins to melt, when the ice doesn't crack loudly, but the ground beneath quietly warms again. And Sam, for the first time in years, felt he was no longer standing alone on that frozen land. In the days that followed, the weather slowly softened. Snow still blanketed the fields, but the midday sun was warm enough for the ice on Sam's porch roof to drip onto the ground. The steady dripping sounded like the heartbeat of the house, a heartbeat that had been silent for years. Sam noticed he woke earlier than before. He lit the fire, cooked breakfast, and every time he heard Claire's light footsteps coming down the stairs, he felt as if life inside this cabin was finding its way back. Claire, too, began settling into ranch life. She helped Sam carry water, feed the chickens, and sometimes stood on the porch for long stretches just to watch the snow melt off the wooden fence. Whenever her hands grew cold, Sam handed her the pair of gloves he had stitched back together. She laughed softly, saying they were far too big, and he answered that things are better when they have a little room to be comfortable. It made her laugh again, a sound so gentle and warm that even Sam was surprised by how much he had missed hearing such a thing in his home. But not everything was peaceful. One afternoon, while Sam was chopping wood and Claire was hanging blankets outside, the ice above the small creek suddenly cracked. Claire had stepped too close without noticing, and her foot slipped through the thinning ice. The cold water splashed up, and she gasped in shock. Sam turned just in time and saw her stumble. He dropped the axe and ran faster than a man half his age. He grabbed her arm, pulled hard, and the two of them fell together into the snowbank. Claire trembled with fear, and Sam held her with the grip of a man drawing back a memory he thought he had lost forever. When she finally calmed, he let her go but kept his hands on her shoulders. His eyes were not calm as usual. They were filled with a deep fear, the kind carried by someone who had already lost a person to the snow. Claire understood instantly. She placed her hand over his, her voice unsteady but firm. "Sam, I'm all right, I promise you. Nothing happened." Sam closed his eyes for a moment. I thought I was about to lose someone again." Claire whispered, "You won't lose me." It was a simple sentence, but it fastened Sam to the present like a gentle tether, pulling him out of the shadow that had held him for so many years. That evening in the kitchen, Sam sat by the fire while Claire poured hot tea. They sat in silence for a long time. Then Claire said, "Sam, I know I'm only here for a while. I know you're not used to having someone else in your home. But this place, it feels like the place where my husband's past still breathes. And at the same time, it feels like where I'm safest." Sam did not look up immediately. He turned the cup in his hands and said slowly, "You don't owe me anything. When spring comes, you can move on. I'll take you to any town you choose." Claire watched him closely. "And you? Do you want me to go?" Sam tightened his grip on the mug, then set it down. "I don't dare want anything. After Eliza died, I never let myself need anyone again. I thought if I lived alone, no one else could be hurt because of me." Claire moved closer and sat beside him. "Sam, I am not Eliza. I'm not here to replace her. But I don't think she would want you to live like someone who lost half his life. You have a good heart. You've just hidden it too well." Sam gave a sad smile. "Eliza used to say that." Claire tilted her head and smiled back. "Then maybe I'm only reminding you." A few days later, the town held a community cookout for struggling miners. The cold weather had made life harder for many families. Sam had avoided these gatherings since Eliza's passing, but when Claire invited him, he hesitated only a moment before nodding. At the event, people were surprised to see him arrive with a young woman at his side. But what moved them most was the sight of Sam and Claire cooking a large pot of soup together. The way they moved, calm, steady, in quiet harmony, reminded the townsfolk of the way Sam and Eliza once stood side by side in this same place. Some of the old neighbors whispered that perhaps the long winter inside Sam's chest was finally beginning to thaw. When the event ended, a little boy ran up asking for more bread. His mother apologized, saying they were late and everything had already run out. Sam saw the boy's cold eyes, and in a heartbeat he saw himself, a child once hungry, once freezing, once saved by someone else's kindness. Without hesitation, Sam removed his scarf and wrapped it around the boy's shoulders. Claire watched him with a tenderness he didn't see in himself. That night, as they walked back to the ranch under a sky full of stars, Claire stood on the porch, breathing little clouds of winter air. Sam lingered a few steps behind, unsure if he should come closer. Then Claire turned to him. "Sam, I don't think my husband meant to send me here, but I think he trusted that I would be safest in the care of a good man. Sam was quiet for a while before asking, "And you? Do you want to stay?" Claire stepped closer, her eyes deep and warm. "I do. Not because I have nowhere else to go, but because I feel if there is any place in this world where I can begin again, it's here." Sam did not answer right away. He exhaled, then said in a voice he had not used with anyone in years, "You can stay as long as you want, Claire." Claire lowered her head, as if hiding the tears welling in her eyes, but Sam saw them, and instead of shrinking back as he once did, his heart opened, just a small space, but enough for the light to enter. Outside, the sound of melting ice dripped steadily from the porch. In the stillness of the winter night, Sam realized that the winter inside him was beginning to thaw as well. Not loudly, not quickly, but quietly, in the same way real feelings find their way home after many years of cold. Spring arrived later that year. But when the Wyoming earth finally softened beneath the last crust of ice and the sun began pulling the darkness away from the old pine ridges, Sam Briggs realized he was no longer walking alone through the winter of his own life. Claire stayed at the ranch longer than she had planned. She fixed the wooden door warped by wind, reorganized the kitchen, and planted a few herbs beneath the window. Nothing grand, nothing romantic in the way people like to write about in novels, but in those small touches lay something Sam had not felt in years. The warmth of a home carrying a breath other than his own. One afternoon, Claire asked him what he thought Eliza would say if she were here to see him let another woman into his life. Sam stood in the yard for a long while, looking toward the hill where Eliza rested. Then he spoke slowly, softly, in a tone only those who have known loss would understand. "I think she would want me to be less alone." Claire pulled her shawl a bit tighter, and from that moment something gentle shifted between them. Not rushed, not forced, just two people finding a new warmth that someone long gone had perhaps sent their way long ago. On many evenings after that, people often saw Sam and Claire walking along the meadow near the creek. Sam taught her how to tell deer tracks from fox tracks, and Claire taught him how to mend the torn edge of his coat with the hidden loop stitch Eliza once used so well. Sometimes they said nothing at all, but the silence was never empty. It was the quiet of two hearts being stitched back together. And each night when they returned to the porch, the sunset brushed Sam's shoulders and Claire's face in a way that felt as if the sky itself was blessing the companionship they had found. The townsfolk soon grew used to seeing Sam no longer walking alone. They smiled more when they passed him, and sometimes during the community cookouts, they whispered that perhaps Eliza had sent Claire to finish the work of light she had left behind. Sam neither denied nor confirmed it. He simply stayed quiet, the quiet of a man grateful for a second chance. Then, one warm day at the edge of spring, Sam asked Claire something he never believed he would have the courage to ask. He stood on the porch with his hands clasped nervously, his voice soft like wind moving through open grass. "Claire, do you think you might stay here? Not for a few weeks, but longer." Claire did not look at him right away. She looked out over the field, where all the snow had melted, and the first blades of grass were rising through the soil. Then she turned, offering a smile so gentle the breeze itself seemed to pause for her answer. "Sam, I think I've already stayed." Sam Briggs, a man who once lost everything and believed his heart had frozen forever, felt something at once familiar and distant. The simple happiness Eliza once brought him long ago. And now it had returned in another form, not to replace anyone, but to continue what had been left unfinished. And to you, dear listeners, if there is anything Sam and Claire's story hopes to remind you, it is this: love is not always found in bright moments. Sometimes it appears on the coldest days, when the heart feels frozen, and someone unexpected arrives with a quiet warmth, just enough to wake the part of us we believed was gone. If this story made you think of someone, or eased your heart even a little, we invite you to stay with us for many more evenings like this. Please consider subscribing, liking, or leaving a comment. No promises of grand things, just a way for us to meet again in these Wild West love stories, where love never arrives late. Only at the moment we are brave enough to open the door for it. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Wishing you a peaceful night.